Okay, so I saw this video on YouTube earlier in the week, Death of the Music Superstar. Go watch it. It was really fascinating to me. Figured that I would kind of give my perspective on it. How do I think that we've gotten to this point? I wrote down a bunch of notes and let's get into it. So, first up, like 80s back then, they used to actually develop the artist. And so you would learn how to do interviews, you would learn how to perform, they would teach you the ropes of being an artist. So then, whenever you got out there, you were ready, you didn't make a fool of yourself. They don't really do that now. They just kind of throw you out to the wolves, and I feel like that's really at the detriment to the artist. Some artists need it more than others. Some labels just let the artists be themselves more because they know that that's going to work. Other artists just really need that, and I think that's really beneficial. So to not have that anymore definitely isn't helpful. Also, I feel like labels have gotten really lazy with marketing their artists. Like, now they want the artists to go on TikTok and market themselves, and they're putting like way too much work on the artist. Of course, the artist definitely needs to do interviews and get their music out there and performances and things like that, but it shouldn't all be at the artist. At the end of the day, the labels have to put work into that, and they've got lazy with that. Also, labels want you to have your own success before they're even willing to sign you. So, like, they want you to have a bunch of streams, a bunch of followers, a bunch of hype already. And just because you might have that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be successful. There's artists such as Prince, like, his first few albums, from my memory, like, what I've heard, didn't do the best. And then he was able to come out with 1999 and Purple Rain and all of those things, but he would have never got to that point if his label would have gave up on him, you know? So that's definitely a point I wanted to make there. And yeah, they just used to put more effort into making sure that the record was good due to the cost, because they didn't want people complaining that they didn't get their money's worth and demanding refunds and everything. So they made sure to get the best producers, the best songwriters, and just really work at it. I mean, look at what Mariah's debut album did. It was a very successful album for her, rightfully so, like 15 million worldwide. And yes, Mariah's vocals amazing and her songwriting top tier for sure, but they made sure to get the right producers to work on the album. They put a lot of money into marketing this album and just making sure that they did what they needed to do for her to be successful, and that was very important for sure. And at this point in the music industry, we're focusing a lot more on consuming the singles instead of the album. And I think that that is a huge detriment as well. And a lot of these singles just come and go. I feel like now we don't really have as many tangible hits as we used to. I mean, Mariah Carey, Boyz II Men, One Sweet Day was number one for 16 weeks. Whitney Houston, I Will Always Love You was number one for 14 weeks. And when you used to have a number one, everyone in the world basically knew it. And if not everyone in the world, probably like in the US or like a certain country, right? Like, it was just that dominant. Now it's really not the same. You can have the number one song in the world and people don't even know about it at all. And that's just because of streaming, and it's changed how we consume music and all those things, which I think is a very important thing to bring out into the forefront and everything. But that's just something that is really important, the fact that they don't even care about the music anymore. And because it's so readily available on streaming, you pay your $10 a month on Spotify and Apple Music, you listen to an album, you might hate it, but you don't feel slighted because you have thousands of albums to listen to over time. But back then, if you spent $10 on an album and you hated it, you felt more of a weight. And so the labels really tried, but just don't really care now as much. And with the tangible hit thing, just because you have a hit on TikTok doesn't mean that it's going to translate into the world. And that's really important. And the songs just aren't really staying on the charts as long as they used to, I will say. And that's a really important thing to bring onto the forefront. Like, Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation album charted in 3 separate calendar years for singles: 1989, 1990, and 1991. She had 7 top 5 hits off that album. The songs of today, they just don't really perform half as well. And I think that that's just due to consumption and due to many other things. But that's something that I wanted to bring to the forefront. And they really need to master the art of cutting down albums. I'm so tired of seeing 20-song albums, 40-song albums, and it just gets ridiculous. 10 to 15 songs usually is best, somewhere in there. Sometimes there's a good 20-song album or more. It really depends on the artist. You have to show me you can give me a great 12-song album first, I think. But they do that because, people are going to listen to it because of streaming and stuff like that. Like, let me get my numbers up. Let me make myself look good. And I just think that that is really ridiculous. Like, let's make a solid album. And I just want the industry and people to care about albums more, because there really is an art to an album. And I think that that quality has been lost for sure. And with the rise of streaming, we're seeing a lot of album bombs, like Taylor Swift's album that just came out. So she'll have a bunch of songs try in the first week, and then they fall heavily in the second week. And so that's very important to note. Some people think that they should basically change the way that it is on Billboard. Some people think, you have the Billboard 200, only official release singles and let those chart. I'm not really sure where I land on that. I can see both perspectives on it for sure, but let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Radio isn't what it used to be because, again, the rise of streaming, so that definitely translates in there as well. And also, I feel like labels used to be a lot more particular about artist interviews and imaging. They were very careful about which interviews the artist actually agreed to do and careful about what they said. Like, the image was very, very important because how people see you also kind of translates into how you sell records. And so now, with the rise of social media, we know a lot more about celebrities, and that's definitely going to sway if you listen to the artist or not, or what you think of the artist and their music. And so you don't really see as much mystique around now for the most part as you used to back then with artists like Prince. Beyonce is also pretty good as that as well. I think Olivia Rodrigo is getting pretty good with that, but that's a really important thing as well because it makes people more interested in the music, and that's something there. You used to have to work harder to get into the industry. There were so many sacrifices the artists had to make. Now it's just a different thing. And I think some artists just want that superstar fame, but they don't want to work hard enough. They don't want to do the touring and make certain sacrifices. And I think labels a lot of times work artists down to the bone, and it is ridiculous. But also at the same point, I think that there has to be a good balance between going out, doing interviews, doing performances, getting people engaged in the music as well. So I think it just depends on the artist. Some artists want to be a superstar, some don't. And I feel like back then there was more of an emphasis on talent, and there are still some talented people out right now. I really love what SZA's doing. I think Taylor Swift is a songwriter for sure. Olivia Rodrigo has a bunch of hits, but back then you had Whitney, Celine, Mariah at the same time, and you just don't really see that happening now. People don't really care about vocalists as much as they used to, and that's kind of a shame, I think. And I feel like the talent just doesn't seem to be as phenomenal as it used to be. And if that is true, and there is some phenomenal talent out there, then it's just not getting pushed out into the mainstream for the other reasons that I've said. And I feel like a lot of times that they're focusing more on the imaging right now more than the actual music, and I just think that that is silly because the music should be first and foremost the most important thing. You also have the death of MTV and TRL music programming, and so the musical education thing is just huge as well. You have ageism. Aretha Franklin came out, the 50s, 60s. She was still having hits in the 90s and stuff because of the record labels not immediately acting like she was disposable, people still consuming her music, people still marketing, and ageism is just really unfortunate. A lot of these new artists cannot perform. If you went on the Showtime Apollo thing and you couldn't perform, you got booed off stage. And now artists just go out, they don't care, they don't know their lyrics, they don't know how to engage the crowd by doing choreography, by singing well, by playing instrument. Like, you got to do something. A lot of them don't care. Award shows are basically corrupt now. Like, they're not really awarding the artists what they deserve to be rewarded, and so the artists aren't showing up and giving great performances there, but there's not really as much of an emphasis on quality performing like there used to be. We used to have so many iconic performing moments, and that's something that a lot of new artists have to work on. Because of that, people aren't really going to see them. And so you may see people getting millions of streams on Spotify, but they know that they're not going to go to an arena to see them. So I think that that's also something that has to be known. And then he pointed out that you really need to be globally known and known within age groups. And I would agree with that. If I ask my grandma who Mariah Carey is, she knows. If I ask her who Olivia Rodrigo is, she's going to be like, who is that? And so I think that they're just kind of having a hard time breaking through from a marketing perspective. And there's just so many things that they can be doing better. I feel like there's a lack of creativity in the music industry in terms of sampling and album concepts. A lot of things have already been done before, so it's kind of hard to think outside of the box, but, try a little bit harder. Who do I think are superstars right now? I would say Taylor Swift, Beyonce, but they are really, really established. In terms of contemporary people, Olivia Rodrigo, SZA might have a chance. We'll just have to wait and see, but it is far from the days of the 90s with Celine and Mariah and Whitney and Janet and Madonna and so on. Like, they just had hit after hit after hit. Things have just really changed now. It's kind of sad to see, I think. Who are your favorite superstars? For me, I'm definitely going to go with Mariah, the blueprint for so many. Everyone want to have a Christmas album because of Mariah. Beyonce, Janet. I also really love Paul McCartney. But that's my analysis on how I think that we got to this point. Do you think that we will have more music superstars in the future? Do you think that that is dead? Why? I would love to know everything. There might be a few in the future, but I think overall it's dead. Something that's sad to see, but let me know all your thoughts down below in the comments.